Welcome to the podcast for this week. Paul Kent, Steve Blocker H. How are you, boys?
Matthew.
How's your week been?
Fantastic.
Busy.
Yep. That's good. That's good.
Not so busy.
Not busy at all.
The sun's coming out.
Today we're going to do iconic games. And you blokes are going to cover off a couple of iconic State of Origin games. I'm going to kick off talking about probably one of the greatest days, I would say the greatest day in Manly Seagulls history, and a day that the Melbourne Storm would look at their fans and go, it's surreal, rather catastrophic. 40-0 to Manly, 2008 grand final. Now, for Melbourne, I was involved with the Melbourne club at the time through my work with Cooper Cronk. And I'm going to tell this story, of course, from the Melbourne viewpoint, because I knew it inside out. And I'm going to talk mainly about the lead up to this iconic game, because the lead up to this game takes you through step by step of this disastrous game for Melbourne and why Manly won so well on the day. And I think it starts at the 2007 grand final, where this rivalry really sort of started to come on between Melbourne and Manly. And it was the first grand final this Melbourne Storm squad had won together. And the final score was 34-8. But it was a lot tougher than 34-8. It was 10-4 at half time. And the second half with the game in the balance, you might remember the bomb goes up and Mick Crocker hits Brett Stewart, knocks him out. Brett Stewart goes off, never comes back onto the field. It becomes a sore point with Manly and their fans. And from that point, that was the turning point, and they really sort of hit the hammer after that, and Storm finished strong, won 34-8, but once again, not a true indication. So we go into 2008, and again, this Melbourne squad, it's their first time of attempting to go back-to-back, these players. And the mistake, looking back in hindsight, was that the Melbourne Storm, the club, wanted it all.
Yeah.
So what they did, they poured a huge amount of energy into the World Club Challenge, travelling over to Leeds and Headingley to play Leeds. They started the season absolutely determined to win the minor premiership. On top of that, the Melbourne Storm would have 8 or 9 players involved with each Origin match. And whereas Manly began the season absolutely single-minded, that they were going to time their run to win the title. That's what it is. Now, the season proper, Melbourne would go on to win the minor premiership, but it was really, really hard going. They would have
also, Matty, had an idea of actually going undefeated too.
It would have been.
They would have been, like, it's impossible, but they would have sat there thinking, we've won a grand final 34-8.
Yep.
If we're dedicated every week, we're on song every week, who's going to beat us?
When I look back on that season proper, I thought, oh, mate, they just swept the competition. It actually wasn't the case. I had a look back on the scores. There were very, very few blowout scores for Melbourne. A number of really tight wins and a lot of tight losses. It was far from smooth sailing. And the other thing on top, when you're going back to back, every single side's up for you, and that becomes draining.
What do you reckon the going over to England and then coming back takes out of you?
Oh, it takes a lot. And I think it's one of the reasons why very few sides in the last 20-odd years have been able to go back-to-back.
And they're starting to do it differently now. The Roosters do it differently, turn it almost in a bit of holiday, have the France trip and all that, to take some of the pressures out. Some teams thought they would go over and do a hit and run mission, go over, only be there for a few days, don't even acclimatise, just get there quickly, play the game, get back on the plane. The other thing too is about when those tight losses you speak about, they sap your energy. They
do.
They're the ones that when you go and you put so much effort into winning a game and you lose at 14-12, that's when you walk off and you think, mate, all that energy, and it's for nothing.
Yeah. Manly again, Manly have a slow start to the year, but they sort of start to build momentum throughout the year and get better and better. Manly and Melbourne met twice before the finals. Round 5, Storm won 26-4. And this is interesting. Round 22, Melbourne beat Manly at Brookvale Oval 16-10, a rather spiteful game. Now, the interesting part about this was the day after the Storm beat Manly that day, I'm walking along Manly Corso. And as I'm walking along, I hear, hey, matey, coming over beer, which straight away
Of
my
course.
head spins. I go,
Who
yeah, here's an excuse. And it's all the Manly boys.
Said yes before you knew who it was.
Exactly. It's all the Manly boys. The Wolfman's there and all the Manly boys. They're having a beer at the New Brighton Hotel. So I sort of walk in and get a beer and sit down with them. And, geez, tough game yesterday. And they forget the fact that I've been working with Cronk and sort of have a little bit to do there.
You're getting a little bit of intel.
I'm getting.
Hey?
Well, they say to me, when I say to them, tough game, they go, mate, they won't beat us again. And they said, we've got their measure. We know how to beat them. And I've got to say, internally, I scoffed.
Yeah.
I said, well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And
I love teams that do that, though.
Yeah.
You can get a sense sometimes with some teams. You just know that you've got their measure.
if we go back to the season proper, for Manly through the long season, as I said before, doesn't appear to waver. For Melbourne, there's lots of little things going on. Craig Bellamy, let's remember, in 2008, was 50-50 if he was going to stay at Melbourne or go to the Brisbane Broncos.
Yeah.
So that was going on every single week. On top of that, the Broncos do pinch Israel Folau in 2008 as well. So,
Right.
so they pinch him. So there's a couple of things going on contractually. And halfway through the year, this is a really crucial thing that happens. Cameron Smith gets cited or gets charged for a tackle.
Chicken wing?
I don't know.
Is it?
No,
The second one was.
Yeah, the second one.
Yeah, sorry.
The first one, no, it's a good one. First one was a charge. I'm not sure what it was. And he's down to miss a week.
Is that the one where he hit? No, he got the first round, wasn't it?
What was it?
It was his charge was first round,
Right
and he
up.
had 95 carryover.
Point.
Yeah,
Yes.
or 92 carryover points for the rest of the. It sat there. They changed the rules after it. Not for the first time after Cameron's been involved, but they changed the rules after where every game you played, you drop 5 points off whatever you carry over.
Yep.
But Cameron had, after the first round, he got a charge, took an early plea, and he went from 125 point charge down to 92.
Yes,
with the early plea.
which meant he could play on.
He could play on, not miss a game.
After that game, when he gets charged straight away, they're sort of talking. They said, well, it's a no-brainer. We're going to take the early plea.
Yeah.
John Rebo rings the club and he says, what are you going to do? They said, we're going to take the early plea. He said,
So
don't
fight
do
it.
He said, don't do it. He said, you've got to fight it.
Yeah.
And they said, but he might miss a week. He said, if he misses a week, good.
Yeah,
he said,
misses a
because
week.
with the carryover, he said, I'm telling you,
You get
if you get
loaded
towards
back
the end of the finals time, he gets charged, he could miss a couple of weeks.
Yep.
But they take the early plea.
Yeah.
Now,
And what happens?
yeah, that's right. Now, Melbourne, their last game of the regular season, they need to beat South by more than 20 points to snatch the minor premiership from Manly. And it's also Matty Guy's last game, what they're saying, for the Melbourne Storm at the point of the regular round. So they put a huge celebration on. Now, Melbourne attack this game like it's a finals game. They always like to, milestone games. They like to win well, and they're going for the minor premiership, something they've really gone after all year. Mate, from what they said, it's a really emotional day. And the players are sky high. And they put the Clunas through South, win by 40-plus points. They grab the minor premierships. They go out after the game. They celebrate. Manly, on the other hand, they're content. They've got a top two finish.
Yeah.
Week one of the finals, Manly hammer the Dragons 38-6 to get a week off. Melbourne turn up at home, flat, to play the Warriors, but everyone says, mate, it's a game they're going to win. They expect to win, and they're going to win until a minute to go.
1 versus 8 that year.
That's
Witt
1
scores.
versus 8,
Yeah.
and Witt scores late.
That's it.
Yep. 1
Now-
versus 8. That was a big one, that one.
Remember, you'll celebrate before we put the ball
That's
down?
right,
Remember
in the
that?
corner.
Put the bloody thing down, son.
I was at the game working for 9, and I got to say, it was surreal. Everyone went, mate, the Warriors have beat Melbourne.
At Melbourne.
At Melbourne in the last minute. Everyone was sort of shell-shocked. So what happens, week 2 of the finals, Manly get the week off. They just sit back on the couch and they watch everyone else play. Meanwhile, Melbourne at that stage now got to go the long way round. And after losing those last couple of seconds against the Warriors, they play this epic game, you might remember, against the Brisbane Broncos at Suncorp Stadium, of which myself and Benny Eichen were commentating the game with Rabbits. And I don't know, Gus and Sterlo must have been away or something. But
No, they put the A team in.
that's, of course they did. And, mate, it's an incredibly epic game. And in that game, Cameron Smith is cited for a chicken wing tackle on semi-thigh day with loading. From that point, he misses 2 games. and he fights the charge, and of course he loses. But Melbourne in that game, they're constantly under the pump against Brisbane, and I often think that's a really good barometer for how Melbourne are travelling, because when Melbourne are travelling well, they just put the cleaners through the Brisbane Broncos. But this one goes down to the final seconds, and you remember GI scores as the final siren goes, and they win. Lockyer falls on the ground.
Remember it.
Collapses. Again, it's a really emotional game. So week 3 of the finals, a fresh Manly beat the Warriors 30-0.
Yeah.
And they win it. It's a tough first half, but the second half they sort of just go on with it. And this is a week where the Storm go to war with the Rugby League world.
Yeah.
Over the Cameron Smith situation. And
saps their energy.
as does. Well, Block, talking to people, I spoke to Frank Panisi yesterday and I said, give me the mindset going into that grand final qualifier against the Sharks. And he said it was us against the world. And he said, I've rarely been involved in a game where a team is so up and so emotional.
Yeah, mate, I remember all that. And I remember Craig Bellamy coming to a press conference. And as a part of the media, you sit there and you look at a tackle with the Cameron one. We all looked at it and thought, oh, he's in trouble here. And so you make a few calls, you ring a couple of ex-officials who used to be on the judiciary or whatever, and you say, mate, what do you reckon? They go, mate, I reckon he's probably going to get a week or he's going to get 2 weeks or whatever. So we all started to say, Smith will get charged out of this and Smith will end up missing the grand final. Then when it happened, Bellamy came to the press conference and he was idling so high. He was just up, and you could see
off his head with everything going on. You reckon?
Just, that intensity you see in the dressing room, in the coach's box.
Yeah,
he brought that to the press conference, and you could see
rubs off on the players.
And he kept saying, "They know, somebody knows, they know, they," and it was almost accusing. He's talking about the media knowing what the charge. He was accusing the judiciary of leaking.
Already been done before he went in.
Yeah,
right.
Essentially being a kangaroo court, which was not right. But straight away I thought, if this is where his head's at, you could see Melbourne were in a bit of bother then because it wasn't the usual cool, calm, collected Melbourne mindset that gets them through the week. Even Bellamy's always so relaxed during the week. He was a long way from, and understandably, because there was a grand final now at stake, and their best player was about to be rubbed out.
How is it that when you arrive on grand final day to be ripe? Because when you said that against Brisbane it was a war, would have taken a lot out of them. Manly arrived after a 30-0 win against the Warriors.
Yeah,
it's a different.
When they play, as I said, mate, they've won 30-0. Mate, they go in against a real dogged Sharks team. Yeah. But, they're sky high. Russell Aiken goes into 9, has a really good game. But they win that game purely on emotion. And Bellyache, mate, he's sky high as well. And he walks into the press conference after the game and he doubles down and he really goes, and gives it, and he gets a $50,000 fine.
Yeah. That was his. They know.
Yes.
Insinuating that it was a kangaroo court, that it was always prejudged.
For people don't understand, when you go into a game and you're emotionally up, those certain games you go into where your emotions are so high, you're almost in tears before the game. Yep. That takes an enormous amount out of you.
Energy. Yeah.
And they've had that. They've had a really emotional win over the Broncos, had a really emotional win over the Sharks. On top of that, they've lost Cameron. They've gone to war with the Rugby League world. So their emotions, are never down. They're up all the time.
And it's hard to maintain.
Mate, it's impossible. Yeah. Impossible to maintain. So they turn up grand final day, and I'm sitting there on the sideline working for 9. And from the opening 5 minutes, and a little bit of hindsight, looking back, I'm looking at this through hindsight. But
and you're thinking back to the day before at the captain's running.
All these different factors. Yeah. And I'm sitting there the opening 5 minutes, and I'm just going, mate, they're just not even in the fight. Manly are just exploding onto the ball, mate. Their tank is full. And a couple of blokes, I remember watching Watmow, and Watmow's like a pinball. He's just bouncing off blokes. He's just punching holes in them every time he's got the ball. Incredibly, looking back on this, when I think back on the game, I went back and checked the score at half-time. My memories were they were so dominant Manly that it must have been 20-0 at half-time. It was 8-0.
Yeah.
Melbourne has done really well.
But the damage had been done?
The damage is done. Now, about 5 minutes into the second half, Michael Robinson scores a great try.
Got a hat-trick, didn't he?
He got a hat-trick. What enormous! He might have got 3 or 4. He had an enormous day, Michael Robinson. They go 14-0 up and buoyant from that point. Yeah, Melbourne are like laying on the ropes and they're gone. Now, the performances on the day that really stand out to me, Brent Kite is just, he gets the Clive Churchill medal. Yeah. He's just a powerhouse.
Unbelievable, yeah.
Just punching through the middle third, creating momentum. Chock Watmouse said before, his energy was unbelievable. His speed and his footwork, they couldn't handle him. The Wolfman David Williams, it was literally the game of his life.
Yeah.
After that game, he gets picked for the Australian side, goes to New Zealand, plays the game there. And I think we all agree the fairy tale moment of that game, Beaver Menzies coming off the bench, the crowd just go crazy. By that point, the match is in the bag. I think they're leading 30-0.
Yeah.
And mate, he scores.
Yeah. And the crowd goes mad. Yeah.
Remember he passed, I thought you should have gone yourself, Beaver, and scored, but then they got dished back on
inside. Yeah, that's right.
And mate, I just remember like the sea of like maroon just going up and 40-0.
And it obliterated the old St George Roosters grand final from 75.
Well, the week after, I had to do a function at the Sydney Football Stadium, and Graham Langland's there, and they asked him, "What did you think?" And he said, "Mate," he goes, "Thank you for Manly. They beat our record."
38-0.
As I said before, Brett Kite, incredible performance. He gets the Clive Churchill medal. Storm shed after the game when you walk in there. They are shell-shocked. Like they're sitting there going, mate, this is, talk about surreal. So we've just been beat 40-0 in the grand final. Israel Folau's in tears because it's his last game as a Storm player. And to be fair, I didn't think he was really wanted to go. Other circumstances took him there. And I'm sitting there and I think that they can't come back from this. They win the comp the next year.
But you got to pay credit to Craig Bellamy there because he would have dismantled them and then rebuilt them.
Incredible. Yeah. Now, as I said before,
I think a lot was learned about energy too.
Yeah, it was. And as I said before, that's the Melbourne side of things because I was in there. That's the insight. Yeah, there's a million stories there with Manly, but I didn't have the insight. But incredible day for the Seagulls. Is there a better day in Seagulls history than that one, boys?
I don't think so. Maybe their first premiership.
Yeah, possibly, yeah.
I think the 78 year was a great period. Remember that great period they played, I think it was 6 games in 22 days.
That's right.
They had replay, they had to play midweek games, ended up winning the grand final on Tuesday afternoon because I picked the Kangaroo Tour and they had to fly out on Saturday. They came back. But, Manly that's their big one. You talk to Manly. Mate, they printed stickers up 40-0 sticker. That's all the sticker said. 40-0.
Everyone's car.
You still see number plates going around.
40-0.
40-0.